and it looks like we're up and running. So here we go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for today's webinar, Let's Talk Smart Once More. This webinar is intended for smart site coordinators, their supervisors, and directors. We're really excited to be having this webinar for the third year. It's an annual webinar that we do to connect with all of our smart funded sites, of which there are 12 in Minnesota. So thank you for joining us again this year. And that's not advancing. One moment. There we go. Great. So before we start officially on the webinar, just a couple of notes. We want to let you know that you are currently muted. We have done that from our end. We are going to be talking through a couple points today, and then we're going to open up for a conversation later on in the webinar. Until that point, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will be addressing those as we go. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a conversation later in the webinar. At that point, it will be *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And if you're listening through your computer audio, you should be able to click unmute from the toolbar on your screen. When we get to that point, we will let you know. So first off, with introductions, hello from SVJI at Mincasa. Again, I'm Shereen and Leah. I am the Minnesota SART Program Coordinator here at the Sexual Violence Justice Institute at the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault. My role here is to sort of coordinate and lead the support that we provide to our 12 SMART coordinators, site coordinators around the state. And that includes things like putting on this webinar and hosting the retreats that we do twice a year, leading the technical assistance calls, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also have Leah Lutz.
Hey everyone, this is Leah. I'm the Sexual Violence Justice Institute Program Manager.
Hey, thanks Leah. And you'll be hearing from Leah a little bit later in the webinar. Of course, we want to know, who are all of you? I know we have some new folks that have just joined their agencies. We have some folks that are joining this webinar for the first time. So what we want you to do right now, if you haven't done so already, is to type your name and your agency into the chat box. And let us know if this is your first time joining the Let's Talk Smart webinar. We'll give you a few moments to do that. You want to say who? Okay.
All right, so this is Leah. I'm going to just share with you who's all on here. So thank you for typing into the chat, by the way. So we have Caroline and Jen and Ashley calling from Support Within Reach, and they've attended the third, second, and the first time. So welcome, that's awesome. We have Trista down in Lyon County with us. Looks like we have Jamie and Julianne from Support Within Reach from Grand Rapids office. Carrie from New Horizons, first time joining the webinar. Chris from the Hope Coalition down in Goodhue, not the first webinar. Welcome to Casey, who's the OJP Grant Manager. We have Dan and Grace from Carver, and it's their first time. And Grace, welcome to the site coordinator community as well, and welcome to you as well, Dan. We have Mary from up in the Duluth area, southern St. Louis. I don't think it's Mary's first time on the call. And I hope I got everybody. If I missed you, I'm just trying to monitor the chat. Let me know if I missed anybody. Okay, cool. Moving on.
Awesome.
And you'll hear from me a little bit more later.
Thanks so much, Leah. I will also let folks know that your SVJI technical assistants are also listening in on the webinar. So after today, feel free to connect with them about anything that you heard or that you will hear that we're going to talk about today. They are your first and best resource. And just a reminder, now that we've gotten some practice typing into the chat box, feel free to type your questions into that box as we go through the rest of the webinar. Great. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to give an overview of what your teams have been up to this year. We don't always get a chance to connect with one another, and we want to give an overview and a shout out to the great accomplishments of your respective teams. We're going to talk about upcoming support, training, and event opportunities that SVJI has. We're also going to provide a couple of program and project updates for what SVJI has been working on. And we'll have some conversation about your wants, needs, and address your questions to the best of our ability today.
Hey, can I mention Nicole from SVC is also on the line. Welcome, Nicole.
Yay! Thank you. So as we have some newcomers or people who are joining this webinar for the first time, and even for folks who have been a part of the SMART community for a while, we think it's always good to just ground us and provide a reminder of who we are as SVJI. What we do at the Sexual Violence Justice Institute is we work with multidisciplinary teams in Minnesota and all across the country to help them improve their systems response to sexual violence at the local level. As you all know, as site coordinators and folks that are working on these teams, whether you're a site coordinator or a director or supervisor, otherwise, this means you're bringing together law enforcement, prosecutors, corrections, probation, medical staff, advocacy, and other community agencies to collaborate and improve how victim survivors are able to access the system's response and services so that they have more options for healing and justice. And as I said, SVJI is not just working with teams here in Minnesota. We're also doing work across the country as well.
Hey, and I just want to welcome in Catherine from Good Hue too.
Yay.
And I know she's been on these calls before.
Thank you. This is a map, a very official map that I created that shows where all of you are located throughout the state. So this is a map of our 12 SMART funded teams in Minnesota. And the agencies and counties that they are representing. So as we were kind of going through those introductions before, you can see where there are different teams in the state of Minnesota. So in case this is new information for you, you're wondering if like, hey, do I have any smart neighbors? This map, very official, lets you know that yes, indeed, there are 12 of you doing this important work across the state. The majority of teams are housed out of MNCASA member programs, but that's not the case for everybody. So now that you know where all of you are located, we want to take some time to talk about the amazing things that your teams across Minnesota have been working on over the past year. So one by one, I'm just going to name some of the accomplishments. It's certainly not an all-encompassing list, but we just wanted to provide a couple of highlights so that you get a sense of what are other teams working on in the state, and you can make connections based on what you hear. So in Beltrami County, the BSMART team have been working really diligently over the past couple of months to help us coordinate a case file review process, which is going to happen later this month. In fact, this is going to be sort of a pilot site for SVJI to engage in the case file review process. So we're really excited to be working with that team for that. The Carver County team, after many, many years, finally completed their protocol over this past year and have started doing protocol trainings in their respective team member agencies. And as was mentioned earlier, they're also transitioning to a new site coordinator, Grace, who is joining, I believe today is Grace's maybe second day. So welcome to Grace. In Goodhue County, this is the Goodhue County SMART team received a Safe Harbor pilot site grant, so they're going to be working to create a protocol around sex trafficking and exploitation. We're really excited to be partnering with that team in this sort of different capacity. The Hennepin County team has been planning a countywide training on their protocol, which was developed and launched last year. And they're really taking an intentional look at present about ways to improve how the team functions and works together collaboratively. In Isanti County, after a couple of years of negotiations, they reached a compromise on kit storage. This was a really contentious issue in the county, but they finally came to an agreement to store kits for 6 months at the hospital. Yay! In Itasca County, new site coordinator Julianne has been working on strengthening relationships across the county. In Lyon County, through the evaluation process, the team learned that there is a higher level of victim survivor engagement when the protocol that they developed is actually followed, and that there's less engagement when they deviate from that protocol. So this is like a clear impact and meaningful change that has come from the team's work on their protocol. In Olmsted County, there's a new site coordinator there, and they've been taking a deep dive into their protocol and adding critical partners to improve the response there. The Ramsey County team sent a number of members to the Mincasa Symposium this year. They also did a county, they were part of a county systems review, case review, as many folks in the state have learned about, and they've been presenting their protocols to the team over the past several months and looking for ways to integrate learnings into their protocol. Julianne also from Itasca County wants us to know that they completed their guidelines and they've been printed and dispersed to all team member agencies as a result, which has strengthened law enforcement relationships. Thank you, Julianne, for highlighting that. And if there are other highlights that you feel are important to mention from your teams, you know, we're certainly not able to encompass all of them right now, so feel free to put them into the chat and we're happy to highlight that. Thanks, Julianne. In Rice County, the team has been planning a regional conference and working on protocol revisions, including creating a mini protocol that will sort of operate like a field guide for responders. The Southern St. Louis team have been doing a lot of work on their medical process, including moving to an electronic medical record system and coordinating what the medical response will look like and how they're going to coordinate with campus Title IX processes. And finally, in Winona County, the team in Winona has been working to implement an evaluation process based on a team retreat that SVJI facilitated for them last year. So that's really exciting to be able to take the learnings of what you learn about the response and make changes based on how things are going. This is just a little bit about what your teams have been doing, the amazing impact that's been happening over the past year. If you feel like there's anything else that you feel is important to highlight, please type that into the chat. Oh, and another one from Itasca, Julianne has been doing many law enforcement trainings and finished wrapping up the guidelines and held a trauma-informed conference in January. That is true. Both teams that are housed out of support within REACH, so Beltrami County and Itasca County, hosted trauma-informed conferences in their areas, which were well attended. Thank you for those highlights. So we wanted to take a little bit of time just to talk about how SVJI has supported your teams over the past year. There are a number of different ways that we do this. We just want to call to mind a few of those. So special project funding, which were formerly known as mini grants. In 2017, that funding was used to send 22 members from 5 different SMART teams to 6 conferences. This included the Minskia Conference, the National Sexual Assault Conference, and SVJI's National Institute. And then this year so far, as of August 1st, we've helped 2 teams to host local conferences and sent 12 members from 3 teams to state and national conferences, including the End Violence Against Women International Conference. So yay! We had our first SMART All-Team event in November of 2017. It was held in Maplewood, which is in Ramsey County, and we had 38 attendees from 10 different teams who attended that event. We were really excited to host that for the first time, and we're going to be having our second one on November 2nd of this year. So please, please save the date, mark your calendars. We would love, love, love to have you there. And please promote this with your respective teams and the staff within those agencies. Another way that we've been supporting your teams this year is we conducted a training needs assessment. So in the spring, we put together a survey of sorts and asked site coordinators to spend some of their precious meeting time learning about the needs with regard to training, learning about those training needs from their team members so that SVJI can be more responsive to what your teams feel they need with regard to training. And this was not just in terms of content and topics, but also those logistic things that really can impact the ability to attend a training that we might be putting on, such as the Smart All-Team event. Thank you so much again for using that precious meeting time to engage in that survey, engage in those conversations. We are really, really excited as we've been putting the data together on our end. We hope to have a report, a summary of what we've learned from you in the next month. If you have any questions about that assessment or anything else, please let us know. So how we supported site coordinators specifically over the past year, I thought it'd be helpful to sort of give a picture, some data. I know some folks are real, like they love the data and the numbers. So we put this little graphic here to give a sense of what has technical assistance from SVJI looked like over the past year for our site coordinators. In 2017, so this was January to end of December of 2017, SVJI put in a total of 388 technical assistance hours with our 12 SMART funded teams. And that included 45 site visits, we attended 58 team meetings, we met with site coordinators 64 times and had 219 phone and email contacts. So this is just a glimpse or one way of looking at the information and how we support site coordinators. Another way that we do that is we have a biannual site coordinator retreat. The most recent one was just a month ago, less than a month ago, about advancing the response to trafficking. So those retreats, if you're not familiar, are basically training. We invite the site coordinators to come together, and we usually are focused on a particular topic. Site coordinators engage in conversation with one another, share ideas, they get a chance to network. There are only 12 SMART site coordinators in the state, and it's not, we're all spread out, so it's not very often that we get to have everybody together in the same room, and I know that this time is really, really valuable for our site coordinators, so we really value that time to connect with them as well. We also put out a quarterly newsletter called the Smart Connection. I hope that everybody's been receiving that and finding it valuable. We usually use that opportunity to highlight the work of a team, one of the 12 teams, and the work that they're doing in their community, and share information about upcoming trainings, different resources that are available to you that can help support your response. And we really want to know, what do you think of this newsletter? We really would love to receive some feedback. This was one of the more tangible things that came out of the first Let's Talk Smart webinar that we did a couple of years ago. There was a desire for more communication, more information about what other SMART teams are up to. So we thought this newsletter would be one way to do that. So we invite your feedback on how you've received that newsletter. Is it meeting that need? Is there something else that could be included in there? I would love for you to send us your thoughts. We're also working to optimize our group site and in terms of sharing resources. What is group site? This might be the first time you're hearing that. This is an online forum that we host for the SMART site coordinators to be able to ask each other questions that we use to communicate about different events and trainings that we have going on that are exclusive to SMART team coordinators or that impact the work of SMART teams. And most frequently and most recently, The group site has been used for coordinators to share information with one another and share different resources that they are using with their own teams. So an example of that might be an agenda template, different protocols, different training outlines. I think that this has become a more valuable resource over the past couple of months, and we want to continue to optimize how the site coordinators are using group site. And if you have ideas about how you'd like to see it used from site coordinators, please let me know. And then of course, we just have ongoing technical assistance. This includes our monthly site coordinator calls, and in addition to the retreats that we have a couple of times a year. So I thought it would be a good idea, just in case we have a lot of new folks on the call, there's been some transition within your respective agencies. Do you know who your site's technical assistant is? If not, here's a handy dandy little chart, if you will. It basically shows all the different SVJI staff who are working as a one-to-one support technical assistant to our SMART funded teams. So we have Jolene Engelking, who works with the Itasca, Rice, and Southern St. Louis teams, Jude Foster, who works with Brenda in Isanti County and Catherine in Goodhue County. We have Jessica Journey, who is also known as JJ, working with the Lyon County and Ramsey County teams. We have John Anna Gans, who works with the Olmsted and Winona teams. And then we have me. I work with the Beltrami team, or B-Smart, the Carver team, and the Hennepin team. So every SMART funded team has a dedicated technical assistant who provides that individual support. This will be the face that you see attending your meetings, your SMART team meetings, and working with the site coordinators to troubleshoot, be a sounding board, and bounce ideas off one another. So hello from all of us, and we hope to connect with you soon if we haven't already met you. Just a quick overview of what SVJI has been up to in terms of our projects and programs. A couple of things. First, we have our trauma-informed victim interviewing project. And this is something that has seen a couple of different iterations over the past year or so. If you haven't already met Justin Boardman, who was the trainer and facilitator at our All-Team event last year, he has been a big part of this project as well, doing a couple of webinars for us earlier in the year, and he'll also be working with us as we pilot some of the things that are coming out of this project with Ramsey County later this year. You want to add anything about that? Okay. Our case file review project, which is led by Jolene, who you saw on the previous slide, has really been taking off, and this is a nationally focused project. Jolene has literally been like hopping all over the country, spreading the word about case file review, because this is something that's really in demand right now. As you probably know, SVJI released the case file review toolkit. Is it a couple of years ago now? Has it been a couple? I don't even remember when it was. I think it was 2016. So there's been a lot of traction over the past several months on the national scale. And as I mentioned earlier, B-Smart, our Beltrami County SMART team, is going to be our first Minnesota pilot site. So we're going to be engaging in the case file review process with this team later this month, and we could not be more excited for that. We also have the Safe Harbor Protocol pilot sites, which I mentioned earlier. There was a process where different counties, teams, communities could apply for funding to develop Safe Harbor Protocol, which is focused on sexual exploitation and trafficking of youth. And our very own Goodhue County SMART team, which we mentioned earlier, was one of the communities to receive this funding. So we're very excited to work with them in developing this protocol. We also want to take a moment to welcome Sarah Florman, our new trafficking policy coordinator. Sarah is your resource for all things related to trafficking and exploitation, and who will be working really intensively with these pilot sites as they develop their Safe Harbor protocol. I realize I'm giving lots of information right now. We're going to have a conversation about all of this information in a couple slides from now. So sharing some of the latest tools and resources that are available to you from SVJI. We have our Startner cards. What are these Startner cards? Well, John Anna Gans leads our Rural Technical Assistance Project here at SVJI and really spearheaded the work on these cards, which are subject matter expert cards, literally cards that are superhero themed, and they are intended to be used as a tool to have conversations amongst team members about the different roles, rules, and realities of the different disciplines that are on your team. So sometimes there can be challenges or conflicts that come up as a result of how teams are able to share information about cases, for example. These superhero themed cards are really meant to put a positive frame on the respective roles of folks that are on the team and engage a discussion about how we can better understand and collaborate with one another. We do have some different activities that will help you put these cards to use. So reach out to us if you have questions or desire for that. Or if you'd like to receive a copy of the Startner cards and you do not have some already. Also part of that Rural Technical Assistance project is a Change is Possible video that we put together. We've been mostly using this video with new site coordinators and new sexual assault response teams, folks that are trying to get a team going in their community. But they can, this video could also be used to give your team a boost if it's feeling lost or off track. And we're happy to share that video with you should you request it. I believe that it's also going to be featured on our new website, which I'll mention in a moment. I mentioned earlier about the case file review toolkit, which was, it's not a new tool, but it is something that has, it's picked up a lot of steam over the past several months. A lot of communities and smart teams have been asking to engage in a case file review process. And we just want to remind you that we have this toolkit that sort of covers the ground in terms of how to go about this process and what needs to be accounted for in terms of victim confidentiality and honoring all the different disciplines to engage in that process. So reach out to us and access our toolkit via the SVJI website. I also want to mention our Rural Realities blog, which is led by John Anna. As part of the Rural Technical Assistance Project. This is a weekly blog where John Anna highlights different resources, talks about different issues that come up on your team, like how to manage conflict, how to make decisions, how do you navigate some of the different discipline barriers that come up. So if you're interested in being a part of the mailing list for that blog, reach out to John Anna. And then the most recent tool that we've shared is a conversation guide and a list of discussion questions as a response to the Star Tribune series Denied Justice that has the first article of which came out on a couple weeks ago. And I have no doubt that you've been having these conversations within your own agencies and responding to different questions and things like that have come up on the local level for you. We put together this conversation guide as a way for you to proactively and intentionally initiate conversation within your team. It's something that needs to happen. It's something that is going to happen. And we really want to be as supportive as possible as your technical assistance provider in helping your teams to navigate this and working with you to use this time as an opportunity to dig into your response. We'll say more about that in a few moments. The final thing coming soon, we've been working on our website. The MNCASA website is going to be getting a facelift, for lack of a better way of saying it. We have some folks internally who've been working really, really hard to make sure that it's going to be really user-friendly, really clear, and really relevant. So stay tuned for more information about the MNCASA website in the weeks to come. Yay! So now is the part of the webinar where we want to have some conversation. I'm going to throw it over to Leah to lead that.
Great, thanks. So we wanted to just kind of give you a year in review from our end, and also really want to hear back from you. So we're going to try to do two things in this part. And please remember to unmute yourself, and that you can share it also in the chat. And why don't we start with this question. So our last webinar was last July. From last July to this current year that we're in, please chat in or share what you found helpful or what you liked, and basically what you would like us to continue to do. And I'm just going to pause and give people some time to type or unmute themselves and share. All right, thanks for chatting. So, like it when we share protocols and other documents that we create over group site, and that they can get a copy from one another and not reinvent the wheel. Will there ever be additional teams funded? I'll hold that question until we get to our next slide. Great question. Enjoys the site coordinator retreat. How available and responsive our site coordinator JJ is. Awesome. Great. So thank you. So our next question is going to be, I would really like SVJI 2, or I'd really like SVJI to consider. And that could be anything from things that you don't want us to do. We're really not going to take it personally. We want to be responsive to you. To things like, I would like more site coordinator calls. I would like less site coordinator calls. I would like to meet other team members. If you're the ED, obviously, and or the supervisor, it might be really, really helpful for you to say, I need information on this and this and this to do my job. So we're going to pause. I'm going to time us for about a couple minutes and really give us your feedback about what we can do from this time moving forward to next July or early August when we have our next call. We're going to take about 30 more seconds. We've heard from, it looks like, just a handful of people, so truly, if you have feedback, let us know. All right, you got some good stuff here. So one person wants trainings or webinars specifically for the supervisors of site coordinators. I think that's a great point. Being the site coordinator and supervising the site coordinator are two different roles and responsibilities. So thank you for sharing that. And there can also be, it's integrating system change into direct service advocacy can also be a challenge at times as well. So thank you for that. Assistance connecting teams to one another. Yeah, we've heard that actually from some team members also saying that the team members themselves would like to be more connected with other team members, and even considering a platform like group site for all the other team members. It's a great one too, that it would be helpful to have an annual overview calendar for all of the SMART related and MNCASA SVJI events, even if it's like to be determined, just so you know what's coming up. And yeah, so you can prioritize and maximize attendance. Totally get that. And I think that's a really tangible, concrete thing that we can definitely set in motion. So having heard these, I'm just gonna pause for like one more minute, and if this sparks things like, oh yeah, I want this, go ahead and type it in. All right, thank you. And our commitment is, we know that your time is valuable and you're spending an hour with us, and our commitment to you is we'll put these suggestions in action. So thank you. And at any time, please reach out to Shereen if you have additional feedback. All right, so I wanted to just take a little bit of time, because there's a couple of things that are going to impact your agencies and your teams quite a bit. And just an FYI with the grant requirements and things like that as well. So just as you're funded at that local level to support the teams and to organize this team process, we are funded through the Office of Justice Programs to support you and are your technical assistance provider. Because of the funding and the way the funding has to be allocated, just a reminder that these teams do need to be focused on criminal justice and criminal justice outcomes. Now, that doesn't mean to say that teams can't touch other areas as well, but we really need the teams to leverage and think about the criminal justice system and stay focused on that and stay on that lane. And then if your team is really interested in doing other work for, like, for example, prevention, I mean, we have Hannah sitting in here. We can always have conversations about how we can leverage what your team is doing and so forth, and strategize with you how you can use the momentum of your team, the will of your team, and things like that. But as the core function of it, it really needs to stay criminal justice focused. And a reminder, as a core function of your grant requirements, and when you sign on, there are requirements to stay connected with SVJI in terms of sharing your resources, in terms of participating in the site coordinator calls, the team trainings and things like that. Now, we don't expect 100% because we know that people are busy and you're going to miss a site coordinator call or miss a training, or something may happen. But if there's anything from SVJI that's a barrier in you connecting with us and fulfilling that part of the grant requirements or support that you feel like we're not providing that you need, we would definitely want to hear about that. So I'm going to just pause and see if there's any questions about the grant requirements and how this can all be facilitated. All right, thank you. And then to get back to the question of other teams being funded, so the funding does come through Minnesota Office of Justice Programs, and depending on, you know, the funding streams, and, you know, there's a lot of factors that go into it, state dollars and federal dollars and so forth, make plans if another team can be funded or not. So currently I can't give you an answer to that, but I know that OJP is really good about letting us know if they think a team could be funded or if another SMART team can't be funded at this point. But that's all the specific information I can share.
Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I also just want to let folks know that my role as Minnesota START Program Coordinator is not only to coordinate the support that we're providing to the 12 SMART funded teams, but I'm also working, and in some capacity or another, all of SVJI is working with other teams, other sexual assault response teams across Minnesota who, whether they have funding or not, are looking to organize their response and collaborate more intentionally across disciplines and across systems, and really look at that response to sexual violence at the local level. One such team is in Scott County. So the Carver County SMART coordinator also did some work in Scott County, which Sexual Violence Center also serves, and started a team over there. And we provide technical assistance to that team as well. So there are some, you know, if it's a possibility or of interest enough, have some conversations with me about what's possible in your community if you're trying to start another team. Just know that that resource is available to you.
That's a great reminder, and that there's other sources of funding other than, you know, state or federal dollars. So I know that some teams have collaborated with private foundations as well, and we can work with you on that. We've done that before, like to build in how we can support the teams, like we've done like all day long trainings and or protocol trainings and things like that. So we want to get creative with you and don't want you to think that it has to be the only Minnesota or federal dollar.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I want to share just a little bit now. I think I'm going to start with the new legislation on the rape kit bill, and then I really want to talk about the Star Tribune series as well, and just share with you some upcoming activities that you can expect to see from our end. So today, August 1st, this new rape kit bill went into effect. There was a press conference held by Representative Marion O'Neill, who carried the legislation in the House. And as you all know, our protocols are a living, evolving document, and there are changes. And I know that many of you have heard about this. I just want to make sure that we all know what these changes are, because this is statewide. It's in statute and legislation. And there are some significant changes about handling of sexual assault kits and victim rights to access the information. So one of the big changes is we have some definitions. We're trying to get commonalities in definitions. So this legislation defines what a restricted and unrestricted kit is. Restricted for our purposes mainly means those victims who have made that formal report to law enforcement. Unrestricted are the victims who have yet decided to make a report but wanted to get the medical forensic exam. And it also defines what submitted and an unsubmitted kit is. Submitted is that it is actually submitted to the forensic laboratory for testing. Unsubmitted means that for whatever reason that victim doesn't yet want to report, so that kit is still being stored and it's unsubmitted. So definitions have been created and agreed upon. There's also an outline for process for transferring these kits. So now the law enforcement agency must retrieve an unrestricted kit. These are unrestricted, even if that victim that means the victim hasn't yet decided to report. And then hand that over to, so the 10 days from the hospital, then it's stored at the law enforcement or another facility that will respect the chain of custody. And then that law enforcement agency must submit that unrestricted kit to the forensic laboratory within 60 days of receiving it. So for that purpose, then, these kits, then there has to be the pickup from the hospital and the submission to the BCA. If for whatever reason, law enforcement decides not to submit these unrestricted kits because there's not evidentiary value, let's say there was already a plea deal or something like that, there has to be a record and a documented reason why with the county attorney. And it has to be documented, and it has to be in conjunction with the county attorney. And then the other thing is victims now, in writing, or they can have a designated person, they can get information about when their kit was submitted to the BCA, and they can also learn if there was a DNA profile from that. And then that request must be fulfilled within 30 days. So, quite a few big changes there. We'll continue to work with you and see what this means for your protocols. Hopefully all of you had received this information, but if you hadn't, because some of you are new to, or we all know how congested emails can get, I think what we'll do too is after this is we'll just send out just our talking points one more time. So right after this webinar, you'll get this information one more time so you can follow it and consider what it means for your county. Many of you already have protocols in place that will meet this new legislation. Some of you may not. So it will be a county by county kind of process for what needs to change or what doesn't need to change. We know there's still things that need to be addressed, such as length of storage and so forth, and hope to continue working on the areas that we still need to address. So any questions on this new legislation? We had some sirens cruising down 94 there. I don't know if you heard them or not. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to give you time to talk about is the Denied Justice Star Tribune series. So a couple of things have been released, talking points last week, and then the conversation guide for the SMART teams. There will be a media statement released today. About the series, about how it's time for change, and honoring the victim survivors who spoke on the story and so forth for the series. We know that there will be more parts of the series coming out. We think perhaps as early as Sunday. And then another kind of article that how the last one was done, there was like that Sunday and the Thursday. We expect it may look a little bit like that. So the series will continue, and just wanted to hear from you what you're hearing in your community, how this is going for you, how we can support you. Hey, I misspoke, so Hannah corrected me. That second, thank you, Hannah, for being here. The next article is going to come out at the end of August, not this Sunday.
just a reminder that you can unmute yourself by pressing *6 if you want to ask your question out loud, and you can also chat it into the chat box. Thanks everybody for chatting in your thoughts so far. Please continue to do so or press *6 to unmute. So one person wrote in that the talking points and media release information have been helpful tools. We're glad to hear that. And someone asked, are other teams having conversations about the articles? The answer is yes, and if not, they should be. That's honestly my perspective. This is a statewide look at the response to sexual violence, and you're all coordinating that response at the local level. So I think that whether we address it directly or not, this is something that impacts the work of your teams. And we created that conversation guide as a way to be proactive and intentional about having those conversations. I have heard from a few site coordinators and seen some communications from site coordinators to their teams about these articles. And there has been some planning to have those conversations at team meetings.
Hi everybody, this is Hannah Otto here at Mancasa. And I also just wanted to let folks know that we will be having a call next week sometime with the directors, and there'll be more communication after that, really just about what this means for survivors in our communities and for how we advocate for them. So we know that this article has sparked some contention, some defensiveness, some things are going on. We're hearing from member programs, law enforcement feeling attacked and perhaps then being aggressive towards some advocacy programs with demands around their messaging. We really just want to say that we know that this is impacting how survivors are going to be seeing law enforcement in their community, your relationships with law enforcement, all of those things. And so we will be creating some tools and working around that. And I really strongly encourage you, if you have any feedback, and again, we will be soliciting it in many ways, but please provide or share it with me or anybody on our team around what you're needing, what you're seeing, and how we can be helpful.
Great, thank you. We're going to give you Hannah's email if you want to reach out to Hannah, because we know you have a lot to navigate in your communities right now. We got another question. Mancasa was tracking issues surrounding stays of adjudication. Do you know that there will be any discussion of the rates of stays in any upcoming articles? For that, we do not know. I asked because of the concerns that I'm hearing from law enforcement, is that there are many stays offered in cases and that it hurts the law enforcement morale in investigating cases. So I think that's a really good point, just completely unsure. But we received that, and as many of you know, Caroline has left, but we'll kind of figure out a way with the, when we have a new staff attorney. We have a temporary one right now, Lindsay Bryce. So I'll also bring that up to Lindsay and make sure it doesn't stay off our radar, or it stays on our radar. Thank you. It will stay on our radar.
Thanks, everybody. So we invite you to and encourage you to keep thinking about this and planning for how you'll have these conversations in your agencies and with your teams, and consider what supports you might need to do so in a meaningful way. My email address was put into the chat, as was Hannah's. And you have your SVJI technical assistance information as well. So we encourage you to keep thinking about this and reach out to us with any questions that you have, and let us know how we can support your work. Before we wrap up, we just want to put a couple more things on your radar. So a reminder to save the date for that Smart All-Team event that we mentioned earlier, happening on November the 2nd. The location is still being determined, but we want to put that out there as soon as possible. That was one of the requests in the chat earlier, so hopefully this helps you to plan. Regarding that, please, please, please send an updated team contact list to your SVJI TA specialist or to me as soon as possible. We want to make sure that the information about this event can reach as many folks on your teams as possible. And it's also, we also just want to keep your team member contact lists intact on our end to be in communication with those folks. So it's a good time of year to sort of do some administrative housekeeping and make sure that those lists are up to date, and we ask for you to share that with us. Thanks in advance. We also have an upcoming SVJI webinar set for the 17th of September at noon. The topic has changed. It was initially going to be about trafficking in rural communities. So stay tuned for what that topic will be, and certainly mark your calendar to be a part of that webinar. More information to come. And we've confirmed that trauma-informed victim interviewing training that we mentioned as part of that project that we talked about earlier in the webinar is going to be happening on November 27th and 28th. So more information will be coming out about that, but you can mark your calendars now. Final reminder here about special project funding. There is a very limited amount left to be requested. As we talked about, this funding can be used to send folks on your team to trainings, to host a training, to print your protocols, whatever the case might be. This money is there to support the work of your teams and advance the response. So please take advantage of that. It's there for your use, and there's a very limited amount left, so get in there. The deadline to submit those requests is the 7th of December. I anticipate that it will probably be gone before then. So even if you're just considering making use of this funding, we encourage you to submit a request form. The request forms are on the group site. They are fillable. You can type right into them and just email it to your technical assistant. So we encourage you to do that. And if you have any questions, reach out to your SVJI technical assistant. So we just want to thank everybody again for joining us today. It's really, really important that we stay in conversation with one another. We are here to support your work, and we want to do so well. So please continue to share your questions, your feedback, your ideas, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of. Like Leah said, we don't take it personally. If you think that we could be doing something better, we want to know so that we can do it better. And if there's something that you found very valuable, we want to know that so that we can do more of it. So reach out to us. Our contact information is up on the screen there. And we thank you again for spending an hour with us today. Is there anything you want to add, Leah?
No, we know this is hard work, so keep on keeping on and do amazing things in this next year.
Yay! Agreed. Thank you, everybody. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.